The Samnite Wars were a long series of conflicts fought between the Roman Republic and the Samnites, a powerful mountain people who lived in the Apennines, south of Rome and north of Lucania. These wars took place in three major phases. The First Samnite War from 343 to 341 BC, the Second Samnite War from 326 to 304 BC, and the Third Samnite War from 298 to 290 BC. Together, they lasted for more than half a century and transformed Rome from a strong regional power into the dominant force in central and southern Italy. The Samnites were not a single city-state like Rome, but a confederation of tribes living in a rugged mountainous region called Samnium. Their territory gave them natural defensive strength, and their warriors were famous for their mobility, endurance, and skill in difficult terrain. South and west of Samnium lay Campania, a wealthy and fertile region with important cities such as Capua and Naples. Control of Campania and the routes through the Apennines became one of the central causes of conflict between Rome and the Samnites. By the middle of the 4th century BC, Rome had expanded southward to the river Liris, which marked the boundary between Latium and Campania. The peoples of this region included the Sidicini, Aurunci, Ausoni, Campanians, and Samnites. Many of them spoke Oscan or related Italic languages, and they shared cultural connections, yet their political interests were often different. The Campanians, although originally related to the Samnites, had developed their own identity and lived in richer lowland cities, while the Samnites remained a strong mountain confederation. In 354 BC, Rome and the Samnites reportedly made a treaty, probably dividing their spheres of influence. Rome's interests lay mainly north of the river Liris, while the Samnites were recognized as dominant to the south. This arrangement collapsed when Rome became involved in Campania. According to the Roman historian Livy, the First Samnite War began when the Samnites attacked the Sidicini, whose main settlement was Teanum Sidicinum. Unable to defend themselves, the Sidicini asked the Campanians for help. The Campanians were then defeated by the Samnites, who advanced toward Capua and occupied the nearby Tifata Hills. Facing serious danger, the Campanians appealed to Rome. At first, the Roman Senate hesitated because Rome already had a treaty with the Samnites. However, the Campanians then surrendered themselves and the city of Capua completely into Roman protection. This changed the political situation. Rome could now claim that it was not simply helping an ally, but defending territory that had placed itself under Roman authority. When Roman envoys asked the Samnites to withdraw from Campania, the Samnites refused and war followed. The traditional Roman account says that the Romans won 3 major victories in 343 BC. One Roman consul, Marcus Valerius Corvus, led his forces into Campania, while the other, Aulus Cornelius Cossus Arvina, marched into Samnium. Valerius fought a hard battle near Mount Gaurus, close to Cumae, and won only after a desperate final charge. Meanwhile, Cornelius was nearly trapped by the Samnites in a mountain pass, but a military tribune named Publius Decius Mus seized a hill with a small force and allowed the Roman army to escape. Later, Valerius won another victory near Suessula after catching the Samnites scattered while searching for supplies. Modern historians treat these stories with caution. Ancient writers often shaped battle narratives to create moral examples, heroic speeches, and dramatic scenes. The story of Publius Decius Mus, for example, resembles other Roman tales of heroic self-sacrifice and may have been embellished over time. Still, most historians accept that Rome achieved some military success in Campania during this period. The war likely ended not with total Roman domination, but with a negotiated peace. In 341 BC, the Samnites asked for peace, and Rome agreed to renew its treaty with them. Rome accepted that the Sidicini remained within the Samnite sphere of influence, but Rome kept its alliance with Capua and Campania. This was the true gain of the First Samnite War. Campania gave Rome access to wealth, manpower, and strategic routes into southern Italy. Even if the war was short, it marked a major turning point in Roman expansion. The Second Samnite War was far longer and more serious. It began in 326 BC after rising tensions in Campania and around Naples. Rome had founded a colony at Fregellae, in a region the Samnites considered part of their influence. At the same time, Rome became involved in the politics of Palaeopolis and Neapolis, the old and new Greek settlements of Naples. When Palaeopolis acted against Roman interests and received support from Samnite forces, Rome declared war. At first, the Romans made progress. They isolated Naples, gained allies among the Lucanians and Apulians, and captured several towns in Samnium. But the war soon became extremely difficult. The Samnites understood the mountains better than the Romans and used the landscape to their advantage. The most famous disaster came in 321 BC at the Caudine Forks. The Samnite commander Gaius Pontius tricked the Roman consuls into leading their army through a narrow mountain pass. Once the Romans entered, the Samnites blocked both ends and trapped them completely. With no escape, the Roman army was forced to surrender. The soldiers were made to pass under the yoke, a humiliating ritual in which defeated troops bowed beneath a frame made of spears. For Rome, this was one of the most shameful moments in its early military history. Later, Roman writers tried to explain that the surrender was not legally binding because it had not been approved by the Roman people, but the disgrace of Caudine Forks remained deeply remembered. After this humiliation, the war continued for many years. Rome slowly adapted to Samnite warfare, improved its military methods, and pushed deeper into central and southern Italy. The conflict spread beyond Samnium and involved Campania, Apulia, Lucania, Etruria, and other regions. Rome founded colonies, captured strategic towns, and built stronger alliances with neighboring peoples. The war was no longer simply about Capua or Naples. It had become a struggle for control of Italy. One of the important features of this period was Rome's growing use of colonies and alliances as tools of expansion. Colonies such as Fregellae, Cales, Sora, and later Alba Fucens helped Rome secure roads, river crossings, and frontier zones. These settlements were not only civilian communities, but also military outposts. They allowed Rome to hold conquered territory and respond quickly to threats. The Second Samnite War also drew in the Etruscans and Umbrians. In 311 BC, while Roman armies were fighting in Samnium, the Etruscans attacked Roman interests in central Italy. This forced Rome to fight on multiple fronts. Roman commanders such as Quintus Fabius, Maximus Rullianus campaigned in Etruria and won important victories. The Romans even crossed the feared Ciminian Forest, a region that had long been considered dangerous and unknown to Roman armies. These campaigns weakened Etruscan resistance and showed that Rome could now operate beyond its traditional sphere. By 304 BC, the Samnites were exhausted and asked for peace. Rome restored the old treaty, but the balance of power had changed completely. The Samnites were still independent, yet Rome had expanded its influence across Campania, southern Latium, parts of Apulia, and central Italy. Several neighboring peoples, including the Marsi, Paeligni, Marrucini, Frentani, and Vestini, entered alliances with Rome. These alliances increased Rome's military manpower and surrounded Samnium with Roman-friendly communities. The Third Samnite War began in 298 BC and became the final great struggle for control of Italy. This time, the Samnites tried to build a wider coalition against Rome. They sought support from the Etruscans, Umbrians, and Gauls, hoping that Rome could be defeated if attacked from several directions at once. This was a serious threat, because Rome now faced not just one enemy, but a broad alliance of peoples from different regions of Italy. The decisive moment came in 295 BC at the Battle of Sentinum. The Samnites and Senioni Gauls fought together against the Romans, while Etruscan and Umbrian forces were expected to support the coalition. The Roman consuls Quintus Fabius, Maximus Rullianus, and Publius Decius Mus led the Roman army. According to tradition, Decius sacrificed himself in battle through a religious act known as devotio, dedicating his life to the gods in exchange for Roman victory. Whether the story is literal or symbolic, the battle ended in a major Roman victory. Sentinum broke the strength of the anti-Roman coalition. The Samnites continued to resist for several more years, but their position had become desperate. Roman armies attacked Samnite towns, captured strongholds, and founded new colonies in key locations. In 293 BC, the Romans won another major victory at Aquilonia, where Samnite forces had gathered under a sacred military oath. After this defeat, Samnite resistance weakened sharply. By 290 BC, the Samnite Wars came to an end. The Samnites were forced into alliance with Rome, likely on unequal terms. They kept their local identity, but they could no longer challenge Roman power. Rome also moved against other neighboring peoples, including the Sabines, and extended its control deeper into the Apennines and toward the Adriatic coast. The consequences of the Samnite Wars were enormous. Rome gained control over much of central Italy and secured access to southern Italy. Its system of colonies, roads, alliances, and military obligations created a powerful network that could supply armies on a scale few rivals could match. Rome's allies were required to provide troops at their own expense, and in return, they received protection and a share in the rewards of conquest. These wars also changed the Roman army. Fighting the Samnites in mountains, forests, and narrow valleys forced Rome to become more flexible and disciplined. The Romans learned to fight in difficult terrain, manage long campaigns, and coordinate multiple armies across different fronts. The experience gained in the Samnite Wars prepared Rome for later struggles against Pyrrhus, Carthage, and the Hellenistic kingdoms of the Eastern Mediterranean. In the end, the Samnite Wars were not just regional conflicts. They were the wars that made Rome the leading power in Italy. After defeating the Samnites and their allies, Rome stood at the center of a vast alliance system that stretched from the Tyrrhenian Sea toward the Adriatic and from Latium into Campania and beyond. This foundation allowed Rome to move from Italian dominance to Mediterranean empire.